when you go to get your SNAP benefits, when you go to sign up for SNAP benefits, what they want us to do is to say, we don't believe you about what your rent is. So you got to go home and get your rent bill and come back and show it to us before we can approve your SNAP benefits. How about your electric bill?
The federal government is correctly telling the state of Illinois, clean up your SNAP program, be more accountable, hold your people accountable, hold your residents accountable. And Governor Pritzker, has the gall to tell people that this is a tax cut for the rich.
So a little bit of back and forth there yesterday. Governor J.B. Pritzker in East St. Louis talking about the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, and I got reaction from Republican State Senator Andrew Chesney. It is Illinois in Focus Daily. I'm Greg Bishop. Like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell, and wake up with us each and every weekday morning for more Illinois in Focus. The live chat's always lively. And we've talked about the Food Assistance Program, SNAP, several times now, especially with the legislation that President Donald Trump enacted. That's the big, beautiful bill, all kinds of elements in there. I mean, we've talked about the SALT deduction cap being lifted and how that benefits a high-tax state like Illinois. We've talked about the issue of school choice and a tax credit scholarship program that the federal government's starting up. Very similar to what Illinois had in place with the Invest in Kids, but obviously Illinois has to opt into that. The Medicaid issues that Democrats say Republicans are trying to throw people off of Medicaid by implementing certain types of requirements, like you have to be either, if you're able-bodied, looking for work, or working or volunteering at least 20 hours a week. And the same seems to be now for SNAP, for the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. So the governor's been asked about SNAP, not necessarily about the issue of what the Trump administration did, but also the issue of the error rate. And Illinois has a higher error rate than the national average. And the error rate, the payment error rate, includes overpayments and underpayments. And Illinois combines about 11+%, but when you just look at the overpayments, Illinois is 10+%, again, higher than the national average for the error payments. But yesterday, Governor J.B. Pritzker instead wanted to focus on what he said were roadblocks and barriers and red tape for people who are wanting to get Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program benefits. Again, the governor down in East St. Louis yesterday.
They're not really trying to root out. They say they're trying to root out fraud and abuse, right? That's what they say. But it's a blatant attempt to make it harder for people to feed their families. And you know why they want to do that? Because it couldn't be cruel, could they? But let's assume they're not cruel. You know what they're trying to do? They're trying to take money away from this program and truly, not trying, they just did it, and give huge tax cuts to the wealthiest people in this country. Honestly, taking things away from people who need it and giving it to people who don't need it, that doesn't seem right to me. Does it seem right to you?
So the governor blaming Republicans for what he says are new barriers and red tape for individuals seeking to have taxpayer-subsidized food assistance through SNAP. Republican State Senator Andrew Chesney said that Republicans are just looking to make sure that SNAP is there for those who need it most.
Republicans are just asking for accountability. Republicans are saying if you want to get a subsidy from the taxpayers, if you want Grandma and Grandpa and Aunt Ethel to pay for your food stamps, and you have the ability as a 25-year-old to work, get off your butt and work. I don't think that's controversial. Why are we asking people on fixed incomes to subsidize people that are able-bodied with no dependents? Why are we asking them to do something? Volunteer, do something. That's only controversial up until the last couple of years when the Democrat Party has not become the working class party. They become the party of woke. They've been the party of gender dysphoria. They've been the party of the Democrats' elites that, want $500 meals when they locked us down in our basements and told us we couldn't leave our homes. But they went to posh restaurants like the governor of California, or when Governor Pritzker sent his family to Florida to a free state. These people are just, they have no backbone. They have very little common sense. And they will say whatever it takes, Greg, whatever it takes to get elected. And they don't care.
And Governor J.B. Pritzker, Chesney said, is a billionaire who stashes his money off of the continental U.S., and he's only interested in re-election to a third term. and Republicans have been consistently critical of the governor and the possibility that he could run for president in 2028, which would be in the middle of the governor's 4-year term. So obviously some politics at play here. The governor saying Republicans want to take benefits away from working people, while the Republicans are saying that Democrats lack common sense and don't care about accountability. Again, back to what the governor called red tape concerning people getting SNAP benefits under the new Trump administration.
The more burdensome they're making the system, the more likely it is that people will fall off on their own. So imagine you need it, but I gave you the example of someone who just doesn't happen to have their electric bill when they're sitting there signing up perhaps for Medicaid, and now they'd like to sign up for SNAP. You don't have the proof of how much you're paying for your utilities. Well, do you have time? I mean, you may be holding down a job, and you may have 3 kids, and you may not be able to go back and forth home to this office where you've got to present these things. So you may just decide, I can't do it anymore. Put on the poorest people in our state, the harder it is for us to deliver for them because the federal government has put up these barriers.
So again, red tape and barriers. I asked Chesney about, listen, I mean, taxpayers have all kinds of barriers they have to jump through just to pay their taxes. Businesses have all kinds of red tape that they have to go through just to run a business that ultimately is taxed, and they pay all these taxes. So is it too much to ask for those who are going to be benefiting from that to prove they're eligible to benefit from that? A question that Chesney addresses.
Republicans are just asking for accountability. Republicans are saying if you want to get a subsidy from the taxpayers, if you want Grandma and Grandpa and Aunt Ethel to pay for your food stamps, and you have the ability as a 25-year-old to work, get off your butt and work. I don't think that's controversial. Why are we asking people on fixed incomes to subsidize people that are able-bodied with no dependents? Why are we asking them to do something? Volunteer, do something. That's only controversial up until the last couple of years.
And again, Chesney talking about the ongoing problems with supplemental nutrition assistance programs, other taxpayer-funded programs, and encouraging that the governor go after waste, fraud, and abuse. And the governor recognized maybe there's something to say about the types of foods that people can get with SNAP. Like, should we steer them away from junk food? Again, here's the governor.
I don't disagree with you that we ought to be looking at, making sure that people actually have the resources to buy the things that are good for them, and that we discourage people from buying, candy and things that aren't good for the kids and for families. But importantly, you got to provide the resources for people before we start talking about what we're going to cut out of people's diets. How about just making sure that people actually have something to eat? And so that concerns me greatly. But I don't disagree. I've talked to a number of people about whether or not, what kinds of things are bad for people's diets and harm their health as a result. And maybe that SNAP benefits should be directed more toward those healthy, when we talked about, meats and fresh food, fresh vegetables, fresh fruits, and so on.
So the governor talking about the importance of fresh foods, vegetables, and nutritious foods instead of getting a bunch of junk food. But you saw others at the table. The Illinois Retail Merchants Association was there as well with the governor. They had a food bank that was there as well. Food banks are not SNAP. They're locally derived and organized donations and such. So it's like an extra safety net that a lot of communities have for those who still need assistance or find themselves in a short-term situation where SNAP can't be provided as quick because government obviously is a bureaucracy and such. But the Pritzker administration was there as well. The Secretary of the Department of Human Services was addressing the question of how much the Trump administration's policies on SNAP is going to cost Illinois state taxpayers for a program that traditionally had been funded primarily by federal taxpayers, but they say this is changing now to where the state's going to have to kick in, and it could be hundreds of millions of dollars in extra added state taxpayer costs.
All of these changes which are purposely bureaucratic and burdensome, will add additional cost and administrative complexity to the state, both in systems and staffing, for an overall cost to the state of $800 million every year. That end result could ultimately be a reduction in programs that most help the people we serve.
$800 million a year of extra added costs to Illinois state taxpayers, according to the Pritzker administration. Some of that could be because of the error rate that the state of Illinois has, and they have to get it under a certain error-rated percentage to not be on the hook for hundreds of millions of dollars. But they also say implementing the policies and procedures for what they say are extra checks to ensure eligibility for receiving those benefits is going to cost $100+ million as well. Chesney says, listen, he's got some suggestions on where they can find that extra money to pay for these types of benefits.
We can stop funding illegal immigrants. That'd be a good place to start. We can always look at waste, fraud, and abuse. You know, Governor Pritzker handed out so many and approved so many programs that have been just embroiled in corruption and fraud, and we see indictment after indictment and inspector general report after inspector general report of people that are misusing federal and state programs, and Governor Pritzker remains silent. Many of them are state employees, and so we, again, as Republicans, want our most vulnerable to get programs that they deserve, but we don't want that to become a lifestyle. Governor Pritzker wants to centralize that power, wants everybody to be on that government dole, and so he can then pick the winners and losers within those programs. He can implement his own DEI, his own reparations, his own winners and losers. You know, you get a grant, you don't get a grant. You're connected to the most powerful, you're not, so you get it, you don't. And so again, you know, Governor Pritzker doesn't want to address the underlying issues in Illinois. We're taxed too much. We're losing population. People don't want to live here. He has had no solution for property taxes. He has passed billions and billions of dollars in tax increases. The federal government is correctly telling the state of Illinois, you know, clean up your SNAP program. Be more accountable. Hold your people accountable. Hold your residents accountable. And Governor Pritzker, you know, has the gall to tell people that this is a tax cut for the rich. Governor Pritzker parks his money in the Grand Cayman Islands. He was the one that sent his family to Florida when he locked down the state of Illinois. I mean, there's nobody that contradicts himself more than Governor Pritzker. And now he's running for a third term and has little interest in the state of Illinois. Now he's going in Texas and he's bouncing around North Carolina, you know, doing his little liberal circles, trying to get everybody excited about him. He's a billionaire governor that has never worked an honest day in his life, and his toxic policies are destroying the state. He is asking us to live in an environment that he himself is unwilling to live. He lives around, you know, skyscrapers and walls with armed security, with $20 million vacation homes, while we are saddled with the aftermath of his very toxic and liberal policies that are destroying the state.
So there you go. Some of the back and forth over SNAP and new work requirements, which aren't new. Apparently, it's all stuff that was going on before COVID that they lifted during COVID, saying, it's an emergency. We need people to get assistance, so we're just going to send money out. Well, that's changing under the Trump administration, getting back to some checks to make sure the people who are eligible for SNAP get the SNAP. And same thing for the Medicaid as well. So we'll continue to see how this unfolds. Man, whether or not Democrats who some may characterize are saying the sky is falling, how they may or may not be correct down the line, because a lot of what they're saying is estimations. There's 1.9 million people in Illinois on SNAP, and the Pritzker administration says more than 300,000 will lose their food benefits. Is that really going to pan out, or are we going to see that these individuals are going to need this food and they properly were of need in that area? So anyways, okay, we'll watch it and continue to update you. It's Illinois in Focus Daily. Go to the website, thecentersquare.com, get the headlines, and subscribe here on YouTube to wake up with us each and every weekday morning for more Illinois in Focus Daily.